Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an out-of-control homeowner association decided to steal a large part of my inherited farmland despite me not being a member of their stupid community. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. Oh boy, I have a hell of a story for all of you today. I read a lot on here about HOAs trying to take over small farms. And well, this time an HOA figured out that it was a smart idea to try and mess with me and my large farm. My land has been in the family for about 250 years at this point, and it was not just some small thing. We are talking a few hundred acres of land, and when my grandfather died, the entire thing was left to me. The one grandkid who stuck around and learned the ropes, wanting to run it one day and keep it in the family. Obviously, I don't run it by myself as I have staff that helps with crops, animals, a vineyard area, etc. Don't get me wrong, I work all day like every other farmer, but more land needs more hands. An HOA development company had been starting up the last couple of years before my grandfather died. They were their own little gated housing development and had nothing to do with me. Well, that is until the HOA president came around and tried to start demanding things out of me. One thing to know about me was that I was serious about my job and position. I did not take orders from anybody, especially a crazy HOA lady. She was asking and trying to make all kind of demands, like needing my livestock registered as service animals since the HOA was a no-pet neighborhood. It came to a boil when she wanted money from me. The HOA lady said, "I have not received any of your dues yet. You owe about 4 months at this point and we are all getting impatient." Me, I've told you at least 3 times now, I'm not part of your HOA. I did not sign up for your HOA and I'm not giving you a penny or listening to any of your dumb rules anymore. This is my land and here I make the rules and decide everything. And what I'm deciding is you need to get off my land and not come back. HOA lady, if you don't pay, then you can expect the next contact to be from our lawyers. Me, great. I will tell them the same thing. I closed the door on her and waited to see if she was actually gonna get a lawyer to try and collect fees from me when I don't even belong to the HOA. She did not sue me, to which surprised me because I always thought her type loved to get involved in a lawsuit even when they had no case to stand on. Instead, she showed up with bulldozers and a construction crew to level a part of my farm. I started going over there and screaming that they had to stop this because it was my land and I never consented to any work being done. HOA, well, you didn't pay, so I had to do something else. It's called eminent domain and you cannot do anything about it. She started laughing, or actually more cackling, like any cheesy movie with an evil witch in it. Now, if you're like me, you might not know what eminent domain means and have to look it up. I'll just explain what it is and why it doesn't make sense for this. Eminent domain basically means the government or a government entity is allowed to take your land if they need it in a way to benefit or help the public. I think the best example is when you hear people being forced to move out of their homes because it is in the way of a bridge or important road being built. For this though, that was not the case. Even if the HOA was gonna use it for public use, that was not how eminent domain worked. Just because the land was allegedly gonna be used for the people does not mean that they have a right to take it away. And I don't think the HOA counts as any kind of governing party that can even claim eminent domain in the first place. I did not trust this lady to not have these bulldozers come after me next though, so I backed off and had to take legal action against her. I got a lawyer and filed an injunction. The sheriff showed up and halted everything. The problem was that a good portion of damage to my property had already been done. We had to take this thing to court, but while we waited, nobody could do anything with the land. It was just stuck being half dug up and a horrible mess. It rained and turned into a dangerous mud pit at one point even. It was an accident waiting to happen, but luckily it never reached that kind of extreme level. When we did get to court, I was arguing that the HOA had no right to use my land for anything, showing that I was outside of the community and not part of the HOA area, even if I wanted to try and join them. Meanwhile, the HOA argument about eminent domain was falling apart faster than anybody could have imagined. They got ripped apart about what it really was and that the paperwork they filed was fraudulent. Papers saying that the land was willingly given up by the owner and had faked signed papers. Now the kicker here was, I guess, when they looked up records, they found old ones from a year ago, because the name they signed was that of my grandfather, dated nearly a full year after he was declared dead. This was clearly fraud. You would think that would be enough to ruin them, but it turns out that it got even worse after that court case was finished. They were ordered to get off my land and pay me retribution to fix it back the way it was. Now the HOA decided to try and get back at me by filing false reports that the people I hired on my farm were illegal immigrants and I was paying them next to nothing. We got investigated and everything checked out fine since they were all citizens. So now the HOA was getting dived into the more attention they drew to themselves, and it turned out the dues were not going to the community like they were meant to be. Instead, the HOA president was siphoning the money slowly into an offshore account, as a way to get the money and avoid paying taxes, as well as trying to just hide it. Might have been successful if they didn't get themselves already in the eye of the government and the courts. So now the HOA was back in court, but this criminal for both the fraud issues from before and now embezzlement. This was also not a case of the HOA president going down, but instead the entire board was found to be a part of it, and all of them got convicted and sent to prison. I don't know if there's some kind of record of an HOA starting up and then getting in trouble and being forced to shut down. If there is, then I think this one might be a good contender. It basically went right into the illegal activities without taking a second glance at anything else. Now that neighborhood doesn't have an HOA anymore, and I was able to restore my land with the money I was given. I think the HOAs need to realize that when they mess with a farmer, they realize the more land we have, the harder we are gonna screw you over for trying to steal it. And here, ripe stars, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments to show your support. Thank you so much, and now let's dive into the Am I the A-hole story. So I have a son who just turned 1. His mom, who was my girlfriend, died in labor along with the other baby she was carrying. I was diagnosed with terminal cancer 3 months ago, and I don't have very long left to live. 2 months at most. I've accepted that I'm gonna die, but I now have to think about what's best for my son. I had to decide who my boy would go to, and I thought my mother, 55, naturally, but then I started to think of her situation as my older, 29, lives with her along with his 5 kids, all aged under 5, and I decided not to, as mom works and my brother, to be honest, is not really raising his kids. He is more dragging them up and can be neglectful. I was not gonna put my son in that environment as I want someone to actually care for him, so I even thought of my aunt, 33, on my dad's side. She is a good mom and her husband a good father to their 3 girls, and I know they could provide for my son. I asked them and they agreed. My mother, however, found out that I was not leaving my son with her, and she got angry with me and said that she is losing me and now losing her grandson too. I gave her my reasons and that she realistically cannot raise him while she's basically raising a man-child and his kids. It all ended in an even bigger argument, and now I am cooling off at home. I understand that things are terrible for her right now as I won't be here soon, but my aunt is a much better choice. It's not like my son won't know who she is, as the walk between hers and my aunt's is only 5 minutes. Reddit, am I the a-hole here? And yeah, ripe stars, I will forward this to you. Do you think OP is the a-hole here or not? Let me know what you think in the comments. Comment number 1 said, not the a-hole at all, and I hope you're considering leaving something behind for your son, like a box, birthday cards, a letter about who his mom was, who you were, how much you loved him, and why your aunt was the best guardian for him. I'm so sorry. Comment number 2, not the a-hole obviously, but I was reading something about things you are leaving him like money and so on. Let me say, you sound like an amazing dad, and it really touches my heart, because my own father is not that great and it felt so weird reading about loving parents when I've never experienced such things. But enough about myself, the money and the pictures are great, but money fades. Years later when he's older, having a letter from you will mean a lot to him because it's your words, and I think it will feel like you are still there for him, and visioning your voice, it will mean a lot to him. An audio recording may also do him well. Best of luck. Comment number 3, not the a-hole. If you haven't already gotten a lawyer to ensure that your aunt will become your child's legal guardian once you pass, you should do that. I have no idea how custody works where you live, but it seems like the best way you can make sure your child is somewhere safe, loved and taken care of. I'm so sorry for your loss and your situation. I cannot imagine how you are dealing with everything. Kudos to you for being able to take care of your own son and the plans for after while going through this. And now we have an update to the story, and it reads like this. I gave my mother a few days to calm herself down before speaking to her again, and she eventually came around. She recognized that it's not optimal for my son to stay with her and that he would be better off with my aunt. She knows that my brother is a slob and is giving him a good kick up the arse to get his life together and anything like that. I've spoken with a lawyer who has helped me with a lot of things, including getting my son legally adopted by my aunt and her husband. He will be staying with me until pass. As a lot of you suggested, I made recordings and videos of myself giving him advice for his milestones. For example, when he loses his first tooth, turning the ages 10, 13, 16, 18, 21, his first girlfriend or boyfriend if he likes, I've made a video in case he is in any way LGBT+, leaving secondary school, going university, getting married, or if he has any kids. There are also things I've put into writing, like how his mother died and that he was supposed to grow up with a twin brother that also sadly passed away. I've also had my lawyer help me set up a little trust to will him £40,000 from my girlfriend's father. When he died, she put the money in a joint bank account that I got when she passed in case he needs help with university or decides to go traveling. All I have to do now is to enjoy the time I've left with him. I've moved my younger brother into my flat so that there will be someone to find me every day for when I go. When I'm gone, I can at least be comforted by the fact that the son I love so much is being taken care of and that I will see the girl I love again and our other angel I never got to meet. Thank you all again. And well, Ripe Stars, I gotta say that was a very sad story, but then again, props to OP, he is an amazing father. Rest in peace. The next story is titled Never Disrespect a Bartender. Happened about 10 years ago now. I'd been working in catering and hospitality, managing pubs for about 10 years at that stage. The catering company I worked for had come up short-staffed for a smallish function and festival they were putting on. Probably maximum 200 people at a venue they controlled. I was in a different division but was asked to help out on the bar and the bump in and out. Easy enough, and the music was looking pretty good, so I agreed, and it was in the middle of spring. The weather had not yet been really warm, so we were expecting decent numbers, but nothing too special. Bringing in the bar was easy enough, the venue was massive and easily able to accommodate the truck, etc. Having a single mobile bar with just one tap tree was probably on the light side, but I figured the venue manager knew what he was doing, so I introduced myself to him and got to work. Unloaded and brought all the gear and beverages in and made a couple of attempts to discuss how we would set up the service area. Each time was shut down with progressively more aggressive language until he finally told me, "I've run dozens of functions in this venue. I think I know how to set it up. We really only asked for a bartender." Okay, no problem, I thought. I did not mention to him that it had been me that picked up the truck from the warehouse, collected the bar and 10 kegs from our supplier, as well as the other beverage package, and delivered it to him. Or that I was the only one able to bump it all out at the end of the evening. So basically I just agreed with whatever he said and set up his the way he wanted. So the weather ended up being a beautiful day, about 27 degrees, 80 Fahrenheit with a light breeze, and the turnout was more like 400, much better than I expected. Pretty quickly, it turned out that we were struggling to keep up with bar service, so I suggested that rather than a traditional service, we should have one person on the till, one person constantly pouring beers, in other words never shut off the tap, and one person filling other drinks, wine, soft drinks, etc. Again, I was snapped at by the now clearly stressed venue supervisor. He said, "You just keep serving and let me do the thinking." Okay, so now I had enough. Customers were getting frustrated at the slow service, and this peanut was too proud to accept advice from someone far more experienced than him. And then the keg blew. I was about to change it when the peanut stepped in and said he would take care of it. I checked that he knew what he was doing and was assured he had done it 100 times and to back off and leave him to it. So I did. I watched him not uncouple the gas line and go straight for the beer lock. Happily, he had his face right in the spot, so as soon as he cracked the lock, he copped a huge spray in the face of nice warm beer foam. All through his hair and all over his glasses, wet all down the front of his shirt as well. It was glorious, and the first 30 people in line thought so as well, because they had witnessed some of his antics. I did not hear much out of him for the rest of the day. He asked me to change the kegs when needed and pretty much stayed away from the service area. We streamlined things as well, and although it did not end up a success as far as customer satisfaction, it was not the disaster that was brewing. The next one is titled Karma Revenge on City. This is my revenge, or maybe a karma story. It goes back to the 1970s but ended just a few years ago. It makes me smile every time I drive past a particular piece of property, knowing the city screwed themselves. My wife and I purchased a 1.5-acre bare corner lot for $7,500 in a second-tier suburb. Gravel road on one side, asphalt county road on the other. The intentions were to build our first house in 4 or 5 years after saving up enough money to afford it. The planning and zoning people we talked to before purchasing the lot assured us the roads would not be improved, to use their exact words, in our lifetime. Lo and behold, 4 years later, we are assessed $45,000 because a housing developer purchased all the land around us to build a huge housing subdivision. I am unsure how many lots, but well over 100. With that kind of density, curb, gutters, sewer, water and paving were required, so the developer pushed through the planning commission and city council a project to get this done, with each property owner asserted their portion based on frontage. Since ours was a corner lot, we got hit twice, assessed per lineal frontage foot for each of the 2 sides of the lot. To make matters worse, after the city took land easements from us required to widen the road and install the improvements, our lot size was reduced by almost half an acre to 0.98 acres. When they presented the easement paperwork for signature, I took it to an attorney to review, and his first question was how much they were offering in compensation. They offered nothing. They were hoping the whole process would just proceed without the issue of payment coming up. When confronted with this omission, the city's reply was, "We don't usually pay for these easements. Your neighbors didn't ask for payment." My neighbors were also not assessed nearly as much as me, and to the best of my knowledge did not hire a lawyer to review the paperwork. To make a long story short, I ended up negotiating a $4,500 payment. But there is more. So my lawyer also said real estate cannot be assessed, no matter how much it cost the city, for more than the increased market value of the lot after the assessment. So then we sued. After several attempts to sell the lot for $45,000 with no takers, it was appraised at a substantially lower value, and we won a settlement from the city, reducing the assessment to only $13,500, but still, there is more. Remember, this all happened in the 70s. The amounts would be more than triple in today's dollars. So to recoup some of the costs, I presented a development plan to the city council to put 6 small rental units, attached row houses, on the property because the existing R1 single-family zoning was not feasible anymore, and it was now on a corner lot with higher traffic. My proposal was shut down on multiple occasions, even after revisions were made at the request of the city planner to bring everything within zoning ordinances. It turns out the Planning Commission and City Council resented having to pay for the easement several years back, and that there was a domino effect. When the neighbors heard the city paid me, they also wanted to be paid. Several attempts were also made to get the lot rezoned commercial to build a gas station, fast food restaurant or similar business, but they were all shut down. I ended up donating the lot to a non-profit that builds houses for the homeless, similar to Habitat for Humanity. A very generous market value appraisal gave me a huge income tax deduction, allowing me to almost break even. And now the rest of the story: the organization the lot was donated to went bankrupt. I know this because the city started to come after me for unpaid property taxes on the land in the early 1980s, until it was proven to them title to the lot was transferred to the non-profit several years previously. The lot stood vacant for 40 years, being maintained by the city. We still live in the neighborhood, and I chuckled over the years every time I drove by it with the family. 2 years ago I noticed the city finally sold it, and what appears to be a 4-unit residential building was constructed. The revenge and karma? The 6 small rental units I wanted to build 40 years ago would have been valued at the time at $500,000, which back then was an insane amount of money. I mean, it still is, but back then that was so much more. Anyway, had the city allowed construction when first requested in the late 70s, the 6 units would have an assessed market value today of $1.5 million based on the market value of similar units in the area. 6 units at $250K each, actually on the low side. With an average assessed value over 40 years of $1 million and a 1.32% average property tax rate, the city lost $528,000 in tax revenue because the city council did not want to pay me $4,500. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Being disabled is hard enough without Karens making it 100 times harder, and yet I come across them all the time. Usually ones that want to ignore the vests on my service dog saying do not touch and distract him. In the second place are Karens that want me kicked out of stores because they don't like a dog being in there with them. The worst thing ever happened though when I moved into a new neighborhood that had a mandatory HOA. In this HOA, there is a pet policy that is pretty strict and states no dogs, cats, lizards or birds allowed. Basically, you can have a goldfish and nothing else for reasons that I don't know or care about. My dog is not a pet, he is a medical device that I have a legal right to keep with me at all times. It overrides any and all animal restrictions. It turns out Karen lives next door to me and is a big stickler for the rules. When she sees me moving in and that I have a dog, she is quick to run outside and confront me about it. Starting out nicely reminding me that I signed a contract and it states that I'm not allowed to have a dog. That she knows many wonderful shelters that can take him in, and she would be even willing to take him there for me. Jeez, imagine this is how you think to nicely introduce yourself to the neighbors. I explain that he is a service dog and point out his vest. This also gets reinforced when the kid comes running outside screaming "doggy, doggy, doggy" and making a beeline for him. He seems like maybe 5, so I calmly put a hand out and explain that he cannot pet the dog because he is working and I need him. Karen does not believe a word I am saying and starts making a fuss that I'm not blind and clearly don't have a disability. That I am carrying boxes inside and to her I look perfectly fine. If it's not clear yet, I have an invisible disability, which makes me even more angry when I see people telling me I don't need a service dog. He is a seizure alert dog and can warn me when one is coming so I can prevent myself from getting hurt. Then staying with me until I recover, or if people are nearby, even getting help for me. I don't want to go into details, but this dog has saved my life before and nobody's gonna threaten to take him away from me. Karen does not want to hear a word of the fact that he is a medical dog and again that I look fine. She says that she doesn't know how I wormed my way into getting a dog into the neighborhood, but that I should give it to her son. Now that he has seen the dog for 5 seconds, he is apparently emotionally attached to it and needs it more than me, directly going against her previous statements being adamant that no dogs can be in the neighborhood. She then even turns to her son and asks if he wants the dog and what name he wants to give it. This lady was totally delusional and I didn't need the stress from her already on top of the stress from moving. I once again refuse and say that my dog is staying with me before telling her to get off my lawn and try to walk away. I want to get into the house and calm down before I work myself up to the point of having a medical problem. He can also signal me for panic attacks and he was subtly doing so, which meant I really had to get away from Karen. Then she made the mistake of grabbing my shoulder, turning me around and shoving a knife in my face. She said for me to hand over my dog now or I was gonna end up bloody on the lawn. And that since she was here longer, nobody would believe me. I got 0 fighting experience, but high anxiety mixed with a knife in my face just kind of did something to me. I don't want to really remember what I did, but my knuckles were bloody and she was on the ground clutching her nose. Maybe somebody in the comments with more knowledge can explain to me what happened, because I'm usually flight, not fight. At that point, my dog is frantically trying to get me to sit down, as I am fully in a panic attack at that moment. The police gets called by somebody and they come over to take everyone's statements. I'm trying to calm down and stop crying to tell them that she tried to take my dog and threatened to stab me because of it. I wanted to press charges and get a restraining order, but the officers on the scene told me that pressing charges were never gonna hold. It would only cause her injury to get more looked into and I could end up getting in trouble. They wanted to chalk it up to a neighborhood dispute and for both of us to go home and cool off. A few days later, Karen decided that if she could not have my dog, then nobody could, and actually tried to run him over. I let him outside in the yard for him to do his business and then just come back. Sometimes I walk him, but I'm not always physically up to it. I hear a weird noise and then my dog cries out, so I run outside. The noise was Karen jumping the curb with her car and my dog cries was, well, my dog crying. She had tried to run him over with her car and she seemed angry for the simple fact that she didn't succeed. I was crying for the 2nd time that week and on the phone with police telling them to send help. It did not look too bad, but his tail looked broken or something, and there was blood. I held him and cursed out Karen until the police arrived and saw that it was the 2 of us again. This time, Karen was too angry to think of anything else and claimed that I should be the one in trouble because the HOA does not allow dogs, so the entire thing was my fault. Attacking a service animal is a bigger deal than attacking a normal pet. Hurting any animals I find to be the scummiest thing in the world, by the way, but I'm just talking legally. So Karen got arrested and I went with my dog to see the emergency veterinarian and get his tail checked out. The accident caused a partial sever and they had to cut more to preserve what they could in the long run. He had to heal for a while, but he didn't have any damage to his spine and after a few days seemed to be back to his old self. Karen got arrested for the animal abuse, but it wasn't what ultimately caused her to end up in jail. It turns out that she had a suspended license due to being drunk behind the wheel multiple times, and plus the home was full of booze and they even found some drugs. No judge was gonna go light on her, especially with a little kid at home she was putting at risk at the same time.
I have no idea if this kid had a father in the picture, but I did hear that he was taken to live with other relatives once Karen was taken away. And yeah, ripe stars, in my opinion, people that hurt animals deserve the absolute worst. That is just pure evil, if you ask me.
And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.